All right, welcome to the SA Pros and EdTech Unite live chat hosted by Guidebook and Dr. Josie Alquist. My name is Jordan MacArthur and I am Guidebook's head of content and community. And I would just like to start out by thanking you for being here with us today. We've got plenty to discuss here, but we also want to make sure that you are a part of the conversation. So if you're joining us live, please comment or ask questions using the Q&A widget or by tweeting with the hashtag DIGLEAD, D-I-G-L-E-A-D. And today we're bringing together the world of student affairs with the world of ed tech vendors to talk about how we can work together and create productive partnerships that benefit everyone involved. Each year, Guidebook works closely with hundreds of universities to implement mobile apps at their schools, and I know that we've personally learned a lot of valuable lessons by taking a consultative approach with our clients, so we'd like to bring that live today. Our partnership with Josie Alquist came about after she and I discovered that we had a mutual interest in figuring out and modeling how student affairs professionals can realize the technology component of the ACPA and NASPA professional competencies areas, which resulted in a digital leadership in higher ed series over on the Guidebook blog, which you can find at blog.guidebook.com. And without further ado, I'd like to kick it over to Josie to talk a little bit about her interest in the subject and hear about her contribution to the series.
Thanks, Jordan, and thank you everyone so much for joining us. Hello from sunny Los Angeles. I am so thrilled to be collaborating with Guidebook and some fantastic professionals today. Guidebook's been a fantastic long-time leader in the EdTech space, so this digital leadership series has been really exciting. For me, as a researcher and educator, my aim is to provide digital education to college students, administrators, and faculty, and so our series was really a perfect expansion of sharing the good word about that. And as Jordan mentioned, ACPA and NASPA added a tech competency to the student affairs professional competencies, which basically kind of made a declaration that technology is not only important, but it's no longer just an optional conversation to be having. And so I realized quickly that it would be important to bring in ed tech vendors to that conversation to start to strategize. So from personal learning networks, social media strategy, and ed tech vendors, there's a lot of great components we're going to have conversations about today. So this panel is a fantastic opportunity to explore these topics, and again, without further ado, both student affairs and ed tech vendors, we come together, and I would like them to introduce themselves. Feel free to jump in, whoever would like to go first.
I guess I'll go first. Ladies first. So I am Tracy Gorham. I'm the CEO of Cranium Cafe, and we have built the first ever communication ACS, academic communication system, that allows students to initiate face-to-face communication with their academic services. So we want to bring back knocking on doors just like they would on campus and allow students that power of initiation, and faculty can control like they would if they were on campus, and administration they can supervise. But what we find is interesting is to allow the students to reach out when they need help and to democratize the student support regardless of ability or location. So we're fully ADA compliant, FERPA and HIPAA, and the collaboration with the foundations of the community colleges of California got us up to the ADA compliancy. We just won an RFP for all of the online advising and counseling and mental health counseling too. So we were the only vendor that had the compliancy. There was one other vendor and they got a D-. So what we're trying to do is bring back the normal communication, that human connection that we would on campus just from any location, and do it in an ADA FERPA compliant way. So that's who I am, and I'll pass it on to somebody else because I can talk forever, so that's a problem that I have.
Well, Tracy, I just want to thank you for being here, and I think that it's really great today that we have a company on the line who's all about communication, because I think we're going to be talking about that a lot today and facilitating that, not only within a campus community, but talking about how you communicated with your clients to figure out what their needs were, I think is going to be an important part of the conversation, so we're really happy to have you here.
Great. Thank you for asking me.
Let's jump over to Kiki Howard from the University of Florida now.
Thanks, Jordan. So my name is Kiki Howard, and I serve as the Associate Director for New Student and Family Programs in the Dean of Students Office at the University of Florida. And really, my job is to successfully orientate our new students here at the University of Florida, as well as assist in other Dean of Students Office responsibilities. And so that ranges from everything from care support to Disability Resource Center to a variety of other things. So my main focus is orientation, and so my real interest is about how do we make technology a part of our students' lives because it's already there, and how do we make ourselves in a space that's going to be conducive for the learning piece, right? So we have all these great ed tech companies out there that are saying that they have the flashiest or they have this new social opportunity, but for me it's about, okay, how do we maximize still the core of what we're doing, which is learning, and then how do we also add into that feature that students are expecting and looking for. And so that's really been my biggest interest. And I've worked with a variety of different educational technology companies, and just really excited to have a conversation about how do we continue to move that conversation forward. So thanks so much for being here.
I want to point out is we have changed our layout a little bit.
I'll jump in behind Kiki here as the last one here. My name is Jim Gresham. I am a senior accounting executive on the Guidebook EDU team and the manager of the Guidebook Raleigh location. I'll start sort of unprofessionally with an apology that it's a little loud here in our burgeoning Raleigh, North Carolina office location. We've got a bunch of people here on the phone chatting with colleges and universities as well. But to give a brief background, I served as a student affairs professional for 6 years at 2 Tier 1 research institutions here in Virginia and North Carolina. And my primary focus and reason I jumped into higher education was to get students more engaged in their college experience. Like so many other student affairs professionals, I was heavily involved as an undergraduate student leader, and wondered why I couldn't also have a cool job like a student affairs professional when I graduated. So having done that, I was able to jump into my first role, received a master's in university administration, moved on to my second role in higher education, and that's where I really found the need to allow my students, my advisees, as well as the campus community to really understand what our office was offering them programmatically. We've been printing, we'd had a website, we'd have different channels of communication, including social media, but we just didn't understand why we didn't have the attendance we were expecting. And through different assessments, we were able to qualitatively determine that really marketing the events was the problem. Students didn't know what was going on. So we switched to a mobile application that happened to be Guidebook, so that's the start of my Guidebook story. I was the first Guidebook customer at my previous institution. Really saw that relationship grow. For students, we saw a doubling of attendance at our major campus events for the program I was responsible for, and the only thing we changed was going mobile. So having seen that engagement with students, I felt like I could better influence student engagement by switching into the ed tech environment. That's where Guidebook came into play. I bumped into them at a meeting and begged them for a job to let me work with students across the country, and they obliged. So we started the Raleigh office location 2 years ago, and we're now 10 people strong. Just on higher education team alone. So we're looking forward to discussing the Guidebook technology, but more importantly, how do we get students involved on campus in a way that's technology driven? So, thank you, Jordan and Josie, for having me on the panel today. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome, great. I have one icebreaker because I'm in higher education student affairs that was supposed to be in our intros. If you could invent one technology that's not already part of your company, what would it be? Mine would be, so I'm training for a triathlon, and I honestly would be okay with having some kind of technology implanted in me so I don't have to wear 100 gadgets to get the data that I want from my training. I know that might make me really weird, but that would be an invention that I would want. Does anyone else have any tech inventions?
Very good
If
question.
I had a machine that I could just put my cup under and it automatically dispensed coffee right here on my tabletop, if it could just make coffee appear somehow out of nowhere, that would be the technology that I would be interested in pursuing.
So you also
I'm a big fan of the Hyperloop. I want us to get that going as fast as possible because I want to make quick trips between LA and San Francisco.
You know, I have to say that I am so focused on student affairs and diversity that I can't think of any other technology. I'm so sorry. I'm so boring. I'm just all in. So I just want to keep on diversifying and having access and really allowing students to reach their academic goals. And that's just what I think: eat, drink, sleep all the time. So I'm going to leave it at that.
For me, I think it would just be, if you've ever seen Back to the Future 2, when he goes into the water and his clothes just automatically dry, it rains probably every day here for a good hour, and so I would probably go with the self-drying clothes where it kind of expands and the air just gets it going, because that would make a lot of people happy, so I'd probably say self-drying clothes.
Those Florida downpours can be brutal, for sure. Okay, well, I think we should kick it off here with maybe, Jim, you told us a little bit about your background when it came to, you were working in student affairs, and then your interest in technology sort of led you to end up working for a technology vendor. But I think it would be interesting to hear from each of the people here today, what is it about this particular area that draws you to the role that you're in today, working with students or providing technology to universities that allows people to communicate with students.
So I have a story that directly relates of why I developed Cranium Cafe. I started as a community college student, and I dropped out developing my first technology at the age of 24. And so I was a dropout student. I got a letter in the mail saying that all my credits are going to go away if I don't go back to school. And so I thought, yes, that's a personal development. I started another software company in between that, but I wanted to earn my degree. It was really important to me. So I became a transfer student, and I transferred to Westminster College. And I was part of this degree program that only professionals, it's project-based, it's not online learning, and not in the classroom, but they vetted us because, we're older, we can get things done on our own, that kind of thing. Out of the 30 people in my cohort, only 6 people passed the first semester. And that is huge. We are smart, we're accomplished, we know how to get this job done. And I didn't pass the first semester, and I thought, whoa, there's a disconnect. So I tried to talk to all of the students that did drop out, and they said, listen, it was really difficult for us to get the help that we need and to understand the assignments, to get tutoring, to get the student services that, it is important to actually achieve these assignments, to achieve that, complete that course and then move on to the next, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is huge. With my background with software development and telecommunications technologies, I can solve this problem. And I talked to one faculty member, and he said, if they could just get to my office and knock on my door, I can help. I can do what I need to do, but no one can get down to the office. And I thought, wow, let's just bring back knocking on doors, and that's exactly what Cranium Cafe does, is replicate the in-office experience. And so based on my own personal experience as a community college student and an adult learner, yeah, I thought I could do something that would help improve the students' lives and achievement. So that's my story there.
I think that's a great story because I find myself a lot of times when I'm thinking about our technology products or thinking about the students that are interacting with them, just always thinking back to my own experience and kind of having that experience of, okay, if I was in college today, and the further away I get from college, the less I think I'm able to truly understand what the experience is for students at this day and age. But it wasn't too long ago. So I can, I think that experience of putting yourself in students' shoes is something that I think, whether you're a student affairs professional or whether you're a technology vendor, it's something that we constantly have to juggle and think about, especially if you're trying to develop a product. So I think that's a really great story. Mickey, I'd love to hear from you about what sort of motivated you to jump into the student affairs profession.
Yeah, so for me, I have been an orientation person since freshman year of college, and I'm on 12 summers now of orientation. I don't know what life is like without it. But then as you sort of go into the orientation field, you realize that at the core of what you're doing, and what Tracy was talking about too, is the helping piece. And there's so many times where these people have these great ideas for the next great technology. And I always say, well, how are we going to help the students, right? And moreover is, how are we going to help not only our students, but help our budget, help our time. We're being now, student affairs professionals are being pulled in so many different directions, especially as, states start looking at budget cuts and other pieces. Is how do we maximize our time? How do we maximize our budget? But above all, how do we continue to still provide the great service that we have been? And how do we also not take the human element out of what we do? That's why I think a lot of student affairs folks jump in is because it's humans. It's interacting, and if technology is going to be a part of that, how do we make it an important and integral part of it, and not just an afterthought? Or if it's simply about getting people information, right? So how do I tie in a human element and getting them information? Or how do I tie them distance-wise, what Tracy was talking about? How do I get them distance-wise? I mean, the online space is just growing at a more rapid rate, and how do you provide the same campus experience online too? So I think, really at the core of why I love technology and student affairs at the same time is that we get to help people, and we get to think about things differently and creatively. And state legislature always loves to hear about how you're doing things different and creatively, and so it sort of helps everybody in that. What's going to be the brag and boast moment, but also how are you going to have the brag and boast moment about that one individual that you helped and help maximize their time. So that's really it for me, though.
I actually, Mickey, I hear that a lot when I'm speaking with clients is, and whether it's a lot of times with potential clients, because our company is about helping campuses go mobile and providing mobile apps, and so they're one of the concerns that we bump up against is, okay, well, am I actually developing something that's going to disconnect students from my message? Are they going to have their heads down during orientation instead of paying attention to the speaker? And so I think that's, I'd kind of like to dive into that area a little bit here. If anyone has any thoughts about technology as an enabler versus technology as some sort of disruptive force that's actually disconnecting students from the communication that we're interested in providing. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I can jump in. Oops, sorry, Tracy, you can go.
You.
I think if you're doing it right, though, I think that there has to be a balance, right? And so a lot of the times is, oh, well, we want to maximize time and we want to maximize budget, so let's just push everything online. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, because the more that students are involved with their phones, and I would even argue family members as well, because I think you're seeing a huge growth trend in that way. But the more that you try and push things online, the more that they actually are rebelling against technology. And so it's not necessarily that technology shouldn't be there, but how do you bring those two worlds together? And for us, it's about, okay, so what is the carrot on the technology that's going to lead them to that human interaction? Or what's that piece that they say, okay, that was really worthwhile, I want more because that person sounds really interesting, or that content sounds really engaging, so I want to dive in more. It's the old adage, if I just print out the PowerPoints, is anybody going to come? I think it's not about it's about making your content appealing and making sure that your technology is the carrot that's bringing them there. So that's been my experience a little bit.
And I was going to add, based on, I've developed different software, different technologies, and the best rule of thumb when developing a technology is keep it really simple and replicate what we naturally do in the real world. So let's just think about like Uber. Uber brought back hitchhiking, right? I mean, catching a ride with your neighbor. That's really simply what it did, but in an elegant, sophisticated way that helps balance both the rider and the driver. Airbnb brought back couch surfing, right? You can just go and surf on anybody's couch, but then elegantly there was a balance of power and control by both parties. What we want to do is bring back simply knocking on a door like we would on campus, but again, we have to be elegant in the way that who has the power and control. And if you can just really replicate what you naturally do and not over-design, then you've got something really special. Because we know that, you know, catching a ride with your neighbor is really easy and it's cost-effective and it's helpful, or, you know, just going to somebody's couch and just staying there. I mean, it's, again, and the same thing, the way that we interact on campus is so natural and it's been so helpful. So, you know, reduce the isolation and let's bring back just simply knocking on doors and allowing the power and control balanced with the student and with the faculty and staff member. So that's what I simply, just simple, and what we really do in the real world is what I think is best.
What I really enjoy hearing here is the commonality of that technology. The goal of it is for human connection, human relation, and like Mickey said, that's the heart of what we do with students. And I also really encourage, when looking at technologies or trying to understand technologies, is not just to like assume, and also have a little bit of empathy. So involve students at every step of the process as you can. Doing my research on college student leaders and how they've grown up with social media, it was so fascinating just to hear why they're not on Facebook anymore or why they are drawn to Snapchat. All these assumptions that I had that were completely blown out of the water with just a couple questions. And so I like that we all have that perspective of we want to build these tools and use these tools to not take us away to devices, but to actually bring together. So I think that's a really great, cool thing. So let's start to look at some logistics, because this came up a lot at a couple conferences that I was at about how do professionals go up to a company at a conference or reach out to an ed tech vendor. Logistically, what are the questions that I even need to ask? How do I know how I could even pitch this to my director, to my VP? And so that's another outcome, hopefully, of this conversation that we could talk about is what are some of those tangible places to start when looking for an ed tech vendor or vice versa when looking to partner with higher ed professionals? Kind of big, open conversation, and hopefully we can take it from there.
And Josie, I'm just going to point out, I'm reading directly from the NASPA Advanced Outcomes right now. One of the outcomes is to provide leadership for the proactive creation, use, and empirical evaluation of technological tools and digital spaces for students, including those drawing on social media and other digital communication and collaboration tools. So we are being mandated to know which questions to ask. So I think this is a perfect topic. Jim, I think that you're a really good candidate to kick off this conversation because you have the DNA of a student affairs professional, but you're also having these conversations a lot of the time.
Sure. Can you hear me okay? I know I was having a little trouble with my microphone earlier. Okay, great. So one of the things that I would recommend, especially, Josie, you mentioned at a conference, is more and more frequently we're seeing other higher ed tech companies appearing at vendor booths at especially your large national conferences. So I think first and foremost, I would say, don't be shy. Don't be afraid to come over and talk to a technology vendor. I feel like there's a little bit of a perception that if you ask the wrong question of a technology vendor, that it's a little bit of an embarrassment, but it's not. We're here as a consultative practice. As Tracy mentioned, both she and I share the experience of wanting to use this technology, working in an education environment or being a student. And Tracy has developed this technology based on her personal experience. I jumped into Guidebook and have helped build the Guidebook EDU team because of my own personal experiences. That we were both really in the shoes of the people that are hopefully utilizing our technologies. And that gives us a better understanding of the questions that you're going to ask. We were asking the same questions when we were in that role. So some of the first things that I would recommend to really get at the heart of the question is think about what you're trying to solve. The big advantage in 2016 is everyone that at least I speak with on a daily basis has thought about mobile in some way. Just the idea of we think we should have a mobile application is a great place to start. So what are the things that you're trying to solve, whether that's for students, for your campus community, or for yourself? Because anything that you're building for the campus community as a student affairs professional, I did it for a while. You're wearing so many hats. There are so many things that you're responsible for. You want to make sure that the first thing that you deploy technology-wise doesn't encumber your time. So what are the headaches even that you are having to solve for your own self as a professional, but then how is that solving it for the student environment as well? And in my personal case, it was we have all of these events and students don't know about all of them. So that was the problem we were trying to solve. So the first question I would ask is, how does your technology advance knowledge of the students about campus environment? What is available to them? My core problem was we have lots of programmatic opportunities and people don't know about them. So my question to the technology vendors was, how does your technology help me market and advertise programmatic opportunities to students? And then taking the answer from the technology companies and certainly, shop around. Like, don't just call one tech vendor and get one demonstration and feel like you've done your research. Everyone's going to have a different opportunity. So make sure that the program or the technology that you're deploying can intentionally connect with your students. Very similar to the way that Mickey has described, that the technology, if you're able to deploy it, solves a specific issue, but also that it incorporates all the other things that Jordan read off in the competencies list. You're going to want to make sure it integrates. If you already have a website or if you have social media, how does the new technology you're deploying leverage the opportunities and the platforms that you already have in place and create a community environment for your students in a way that's going to benefit them in the long run?
I can follow up on that. Is to Jim's point, is I think that you have to know that you hold the power, right? Is that eventually you're going to be writing a check to somebody else, you're going to be signing a contract. And so although you might say the wrong thing, ask the wrong question, it doesn't matter, because eventually if that company, and in my experience the good ones, want to explain it to you. They want to break it down for you because they know that you're going to have another conversation, right? I don't ultimately sign our contracts. That has to go up many pieces of the chain, and sometimes they have no idea what that technology can do or what it will do. And so it's your job to understand that you hold the power in both ways. You hold the power with the company because it's their job to explain it to you, and then you also hold the power to make sure that you're empowering other people to have that conversation. So when it goes up for a vote at a vice president's council or it goes up to this other place, what's going to be the benefit that you can then articulate to them? And to Jim's point about making sure that you do your research, I think that's so vital, is because you see another institution, and higher ed can sometimes be a copycat field, is that one institution down the road is doing something, so they want to do the exact same thing. I think it's the companies that understand that exists, but also want to help you forge your own path, and asking them, okay, so what can you do different for me? Because that is also the piece that you have to sell is, well, what's the cool factor for us? For the University of Florida, what's going to be different than another institution down the road? Because that's another part of that conversation that you're going to have with somebody else. So I think really is, if you understand that you hold the power, it makes it less, because you see all these people on Twitter and they're all these sort of like the Twitterati out there about all these great conversations. You're like, well, I don't know that. I don't know that experience, or they're doing all these cool things. Is how do I get beyond that and then go to your core value of, okay, what's going to be the benefit and what problem am I solving? Because once you get past all of that, it's so much easier. And the companies that are really, really good, because you can feel it in your gut, those are the ones that you want to work with, that kind of get that and want to work with you and make you look good as much as they're making themselves look good. So that's my perspective anyway.
I would like to So this is how we do it at Cranium Cafe. What we accomplish is our colleges and universities that use our system directly correlates student services and success with accreditation. So when we do a pilot, we first have a survey that's sent out to all the students on their help desk, tutoring, academic advising, financial aid, office hours for professors, orientation, Title IX offices. All the student services offices use our technology. And so with this survey, we first, before the pilot, we send it out. And then after the pilot, we send out the same survey. And this is what happened we got a survey back with the Nevada Community College. And with their financial aid, the satisfaction of their financial aid directly using Cranium Cafe went up 10%. The accessibility went up 24%. And that's financial aid. Then we go to library service. They have 24% satisfaction, accessibility again 20%, help desk, advising, all the same numbers. So you really want to have data. And you really want to, if that ed tech provider can provide the data, that's going to help with your success rate with your students and with accreditation and graduation rates, and it correlates perfectly with that. If they're aligned with what your needs are with your college, and that is increased enrollment and graduation rates and success rates, and they can provide and prove the data, then I think that's great. I think it's all about data and what are your goals as a college or university, and are your goals aligned with the goals of that ed tech provider?
Tracy, that's actually a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought that up, is I think that one of the things that, particularly if you are maybe new to evaluating a technology solution, or if this is something that you maybe is a little bit out of your comfort zone, one of the things that you can take comfort in is that a lot of times layering a digital product on top of something that wasn't digital before actually unlocks a world of insight that you didn't have available to you before, and so you can discuss with your provider, if this is something, if I'm going to stick my neck out to adopt this on my campus, what sort of tools are you going to provide me to then show that it actually made a difference, or that I wasn't so crazy when I thought that this was a good idea, or for Mickey, when I have to go to my vice president and I say, year over year, here are the benefits that I've seen from adopting this. That is not always implementations of of any sort of any new thing that you're adopting, but the benefit of technology is that oftentimes the measurement capability is built into the product itself, and so I think that that's an A-OK point.
Mickey, Mickey, I wanted to circle back to you because coming from the student affairs side of the house, you had mentioned that sometimes you just know in your gut if a company is going to be good to work with. For someone that maybe hasn't cultivated their gut instincts quite yet, what have been some of those core qualities? And then the second part of that question is, because you're not the one signing contracts, what are some things for maybe a new professional or a mid-level to consider when knowing they have to pitch this to their director or above to actually sign on for working with a vendor?
Yeah, I think, the gut piece comes when a company understands time, right? And let me explain what I mean by time, is because higher education, as much as we like to think that we are the most advanced and we move the most forward, is that sometimes to get something accomplished, though, it takes a little bit of time. You have to pitch it. Then you have to get all of the matching quotes. You have to then do research on all the different areas. But I think the companies that don't try and do pressure sales, and so they're not trying to say, if you don't sign now, you're going to miss out, or your students are going to miss out, or your families are going to miss out. The ones that let you take that time and just follow up with a simple, hey, do you need anything else from us? We're really excited about this opportunity. And make it feel like they understand that how higher education works. I think those are the companies for me where I go, that's somebody that I always always call it my Florida family, is that we're entrusting them with our students, right? We're entrusting them with our family members. And when they understand that it's a process, but they also understand that it's a process to get it up and running, is that there's going to be folks that are going to ask for more things than they can shake a stick at, and we want to make sure that they are able to do that. And so we try and run them through a gauntlet of, okay, so what if this happens, or if a family member needs access, or to Tracy's point about accessibility, what are the accessibility points that are going to make us compliant in certain areas? And when they can easily just send you an email back within a matter of hours or just even minutes sometimes, I think that's when you know that it's going to be the right company, or that they're saying the right buzzwords, and not buzzwords of that they're using families instead of parents, but are really understanding, okay, they understand your core principles, or they understand where you're going. For us, it's this whole, it's a march to sort of our rankings and other things, that they know that and they've done their research, and then you go, okay, you get it, you understand what I'm trying to say without saying it. And then your second question, I can't remember what the second question was about.
So considering having to, you find a really great vendor at a conference or online, what would be a process, a successful way to then be able to pitch that to higher levels of leadership that would be the one giving the approval?
I think for me, whenever I think about technology, is that I take it back to what Jordan was talking about with that human first process. And so I try and break it down, and I try and say, okay, here's where our process is right now. It's linear, or it's going all these different ways. Here's where I think technology can exist, and here's where I think are possible niches. Let me give you an example. For Guidebook, right? So we jumped in with Guidebook in late 2012, early 2013. At the time, there was only a handful of institutions using it. When I sat down with our director and I said, listen, this is what I think is going to be the next big thing, is going to be this mobile technology, using schedules, using being able to take some pieces away from our paper process. And she kind of was like, okay, that's cool, but this is working. Okay, let me go back to the drawing board and keep going. And then it was about asking the company for data. It was about asking them, hey, I want to talk to different clients. I want to talk about how they're using it. What are their success rates? To Tracy's point about data, is I needed data points in order to sell them of, okay, here's the cost, but let me tell you what 3 years out is going to cost us if we wait to jump in. And so I knew what the research was. And for me, then it was, at the end of the day, I got past the director, then it was on to the VP, and her questions, it was kind of funny because her questions were sometimes easier, of like, oh, how are people going to be able to connect? And you're like, oh, okay, this is not what I thought, after she had already read the proposal and everything. But I think then it's about, okay, let me show you what this is going to look like, and let me pilot it, and let me test it. And yes, I'm going to ask you to sign a 3-year contract, but perhaps that, some of that is a little bit of trust. And I think that's also for you as the individual, though, is if you can't just come in year one and just pitch an idea of here's what this is going to do, is that you have to understand the space in which students exist. I pulled more research about how mobile technology is going to influence the next great generation, or pulling some of your research about digital identity. I pulled all of that so then people can say, okay, this is not going to take away from our human-centered approach. It's going to add to it, and it's going to add value. And then after year one, it was the evaluation process, though, because you better bet your bottom dollar that people were asking, okay, how many people downloaded it? And we could see that over, year one, we had over 8,000 downloads. By year two, 10,000 downloads, then 12,000 downloads. As long as you're continually going up and you're doing the other pieces that are going to make that successful, I think other people go, now when it was time to renegotiate contracts, it was, of course we're doing that. Why wouldn't we do that? Because you set up a great foundation, but then you also built the house that goes on top of that foundation to keep it going. And I think that's been my experience of really, I hate to sell it, but of selling somebody else on a product that they have no idea how it's going to work. And they still have no idea how it actually works, but that people come up and say, thank you so much, or this is great, this is just what I was looking for, and then sending those great comments and a lot of assessment data along the way. But that's really at the beginning, though, is understanding the product, understanding where it lives in the space, and how it's going to influence your students.
Cool, Mickey. You mentioned the 3-year contract, which I think this is actually a good segue into some questions that we've been getting on our Q&A channel over here. So Sarah actually asked, with technology changing so quickly, how often should contracts be revisited? And so I think this would be a great chance to hear from our vendors here. You know, if something isn't working the first year like you thought it would, or you know, technology changes so quickly, so how do we know that the contract that we wrote last year is actually still, you know, valid for the technology that exists today? I think this is a great chance to hear from both Jim and Tracy.
To jump in on a multi-year contract, just to preface this with, different technology companies are going to allow you different contract options. So some services are an annual contract, some services are an annual contract but require a 2-year agreement up front or a 3-year agreement up front. Some technology companies are going to offer you a multi-year contract with a discount, and those are all things that you want to make sure, like we were talking earlier, these very first questions that you need to ask is, what is your pricing model? Is it an annual subscription service? Am I required to sign up for a specific term? And is there a discount for signing up for multi-years? That's a very important question that you should be asking your technology vendor. And when it comes to the dangers maybe of signing a 3-year contract, it goes back to Nikki's description of how do you choose the right company. You will, through your research and this long process of deciding which company you want to go through, you should be asking questions about what their product roadmap looks like, or what they're planning on updating in the next 3 months. What can we expect from your company? And what can we expect annually? Or Android and iOS, when you're talking about mobile platforms, are updated by Apple and Google on an annual basis. What does the technology vendor that you're choosing have to say about that upgrade process? And if you feel very comfortable with their responses, like Nikki said, they can provide those answers to you very easily within a short period of time. Like they're not going back and making it up in some meeting just because you asked the question because they've never had it before. You're going to feel comfortable signing a multi-year agreement, and then making sure that services that you're offered at the very beginning, that first year at the least, are offered to you through those 2 or 3 years of the contract. And then also wanting to know, you know, like, I'm taking a risk by dedicating myself to you for 3 years. What type of things can we expect from you over the next 2 or 3 years? And understand, too, from the vendor standpoint, that some of the product roadmap is considered proprietary information. You know, like we can't just tell you, you know, in 6 months we promise that this is going to be available, because if that leaks, our competitors may have the same technology. So there is a little bit of caveat, a little bit of give and take in that relationship, but you shouldn't sign a multi-year contract unless you're comfortable with the relationship that you formed. And I do feel like, working in a consultative sales position, that you should be building a relationship with the vendor. These reports that Mickey said he put together, the process that he went through with the director and the VP, oftentimes with conversations, I think higher education professionals feel like they can't bother the vendor repeatedly for information. We know as education vendors that you have a long process. Don't feel like you can't reach back out to us to help you through that process, to help you write a proposal, to show you drafts from other peer institutions. Tracy, is your experience similar?
Yeah, I actually would like to add the way that we do collaboration. Everything that Cranium Cafe offers is collaborative. We're cloud-based and we're open source. And if a company can feel comfortable enough in their own skin that they will allow to have an open source code, that your technology department, because let's be honest, like the University of Florida has a brilliant IT department with some really capable people, and they might have some initiatives that are very unique to University of Florida. Thus, we think having an open source technology that allows these great teams to build into our technology and really, truly be collaborative. We are high touch. I'm the CEO of this company, but I will give you my email. I'll give you my cell phone. I am on our website that you can knock on my door, and we really practice what we preach. If that's what type of technology and technology company, if they practice what they preach, then that's really good. And if they're high touch, then fantastic. Everything that we've made, and I see a question from Emma about, what do you roll out the tech side? Is it the ed tech market, or is it the education institutions? We listen to the institutions. everything that we've built with our ADA compliancy, with our virtual lobby, was built with the California Community Colleges in the RFP that we won. And we are collaborative. All the technology features that we have built is with collaboration of faculty and staff and administration, every single feature and function. So, you know, and we're also grassroots. We're not backed up by a VC capital firm. We are grassroots. We built this technology at a Westminster College, and that gives us a different perspective on really trying to do what we say we're going to do, and that is to democratize student support. So it's like, who are the founders of the company? How are they backed financially is a good thing. How do they, collaborate with their current and past clients? And what do they base their new features and functions on? And is it based on your needs or their needs? And we always base it on the institution needs, basically. Yes.
I think one of the themes that I'm hearing that I totally agree with is that it's okay to expect transparency from a technology group. Of course, you're dealing with a business, and so like Jim said, part of that might be proprietary, and the worst that they can say is, well, we can't really talk about that at the moment. But it is okay to want to know about the people who started the company, why they started the company, what sort of accessibility standards do they have, and also what is your product roadmap. Let us know that you have a game plan for moving forward.
One of the just to add on to the last comment that you made, Jordan, and to get a little bit at the heart of who's deciding what technologies to put in the technology that's being sold. One of the things that I would really encourage anyone in the industry, the education industry, to ask of their vendor is, do you have previous student affairs professionals on your staff? And I feel like at least 50%, I know 50% of our education staff here have previous student affairs professional experience. So as Mickey said, maybe they don't know 100% the vocabulary that you refer to parents as families, or it's not a dormitory, it's a residence hall. Like, these types of nuanced differences are apparent if you have previous student affairs professionals, and the relationship that you're building becomes much more fluid if you have someone experienced from the educational industry that's helping you with your decision to move forward with the technology.
That's a really interesting observation. As the job market gets more competitive with grad students all the way up to senior level, is that you are definitely starting to see more crossover of student affairs, higher ed professionals going over to the ed tech side, and hopefully that is just going to be resulting in better products and better relationships. So. Jordan, did you have something? Sorry.
No, I think Mickey actually had something that he wanted to add to.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just want to talk about on campus too. Is about making sure that you have the right role players around in the conversation. And so we talk about Tracy talked about the folks from technology being there. I think that's so important to get them on board early instead of saying, hey, we want to roll this out. What do you think? And they're going to go, whoa, let's get security. Let's get all our enterprise folks. Let's get all these. And you're like, oh boy, okay, this turned into now, what we thought was just be a month, it's going to be 2 to 3 months. And I would even say is to pull in people that you didn't think were going to be primary users of it. What is your current people process that you're trying to automate a little bit? Can you get feedback from them early before you start approaching these ed companies? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to ask you who else needs to be involved. Again, the good companies will. Who else needs to be involved? We do a review every single year with an entire committee of most of our technologies. And really it happens, we have committees that meet every month or 2 months to see what can we change or what can we edit. I think if you bring them in from the very beginning of, going back to Jim's point of that big problem, what's that problem, how are we solving it, bring in all the role players, and then have all the role players invested in that, that makes for a successful technology relationship and also a successful relationship on your campus.
That's great, Mickey. I think that Sarah had a question here that I think is a nice thing to sort of wrap up the conversation, and it's actually very similar to the question that Josie and I had planned for the final question here. So maybe we can just go through the list, the lineup here, and maybe give your take on what the next big frontiers are for EdTech, or what is your sort of vision or hope for the future of how technology continues to evolve, especially when it pertains to higher ed and the student affairs profession. Let's start with.
Okay. So what we think is a big new frontier is academic communication systems. So right now, everybody's using a different video communication platform, maybe chat, maybe disconnection of these, real-time communication streams. Just like a learning management system or a student information system, an LMS and an SIS, you would not have multiple learning management systems on your campus or multiple SIS systems, hopefully, on your campus. You would have a standard enterprise system that A, is ADA compliant, FERPA compliant, and protects all the students, privacy and the faculty and staff members, but allows the ability for administration to get in there and run reports and data and all that good stuff, right? So an ACS, academic communication system, would be the real-time video engagement, instant communication chat, group chats, but then also an ACS should allow the same type of things like SIS and LMSs do, which is create different departments, different levels of administration access, and that's what our platform does. You can create a department for student services and several levels of access to different groups, say maybe a writing center lab or orientation center, and have the manager have access to that, but then the VP of Student Services has access to all of those groups. And then it will be one standard, enterprise level of communication that is 100% ADA and FERPA, but then also the IT departments, they do not have to support multiple systems. Somebody's trying to support Adobe Connect or Skype or all these other things, and scheduling is not, involved with it, which we have scheduling involved. So you need it one standard enterprise level of ACS, academic communication system, that also ties in with your SIS and LMSs, all works together perfectly and combines all the data perfectly too, which we have. And I think that's the big thing that's coming up. ACSs, big time.
Cool, Tracy. I like what you said about that. Sort of what I'm pulling from that is that the communication system reflects what we have available to us in our personal lives and in the real world and what we expect from Google Hangouts and all. But it also has the forethought to sort of work within the hierarchy of what we know to be the hierarchies of higher ed institutions. So I think that is a salient point. Mickey, how about from your end? What are you looking forward to in the future, or where do you see the roadmap going?
I think it's less about the tangible technology, but more about the education of our students and really our family members. I think that's really where we're going, is that I think sometimes higher education professionals are taking for granted how much our students really know about technology, but also how much they don't know about technology. I think the more that we just want to force technology because that's what they want, well, is it really what they want? And if they do get it, is how are they going to use it in the most productive manner, right? And so when we think about the competencies, right? And so bringing it sort of back to the main point here is, those competencies talk a lot about educating students, and it talks a lot about making sure that they understand how to use it, and also for practitioners to use it responsibly. Every time I walk into our office and I talk to a student, I ask them to make even, simple things on a computer, and they have no idea. But then you turn them over to another technology, and they know how to use everything. And so can you capitalize on some of those areas of talent and strength that they already have in the technology field, and how do we then start educating them? And not from, and I think this is a bigger macro education thing in the K through 12 system too, but I think for me in technology is going to be how do we use it responsibly, and how do we teach students to harness that power for good, and to use it in the right way. So I think for me is education.
To jump in, similar to Mickey's comment, one of the things that I wanted to read straight out of the competencies list is that it's charging us to design, implement, and assess technology-rich learning experiences for students and other stakeholders that model effective use of visual and interactive media. So one of the similar comments from Jordan earlier in this message is that I don't know what the next technology frontier is going to be in higher education, but I'm challenging higher education professionals, having been one myself, to not shy away from technology in general. Is that a lot of our conversations, at least personally, when I'm chatting with different institutions, is there seems to be, a little bit of hesitance just to look at technology. But I think if higher education professionals are able to think about technology in a way that, as Tracy mentioned, it mimics the way that they're currently interacting with their campus communities, that it doesn't get in the way of your current practices, that it instead augments or bolsters, it provides a tool for you as a student affairs professional to engage with your students and your families and your campus community. So if there's anything that I think we're moving toward in higher education that we're not doing already, is the technology engagement for parents and families as well. Is that we're doing a really good job of hitting students with technology, and higher education has done a good job of slowly introducing technology, even some early adopters in the 90s, but really true ubiquitous use of technology is still getting rolled out to the students. But those institutions that were a little forward thinking with student technology are now starting to wonder about, how do we get our families involved as well? And do we get them involved in the same environment as our students? We have a little bit of a helicopter parent situation sometimes, but that's all part of the fun and experience. It's if you're open to having your parents and families have access to the same systems, you may find that their students become more involved because their families are encouraging them to do so, just because it's as easy for the families to access the content as it is for the students. And you get a little tap on the shoulder from whoever's back home saying, I saw this great activity, or maybe you have an upcoming advisement appointment, depending on how much they can get involved in your student technology lifestyle. But I think it's becoming a more holistic approach to the campus environment, that we should think of technology as a way not just to encourage students to do something or action them to do something, but they have the digital technology in their hands, in their laptops, in their cell phones, that we have a new window through which to engage them, and we shouldn't shy away from that opportunity, maybe because there are a few students or represented groups that don't have that type of technology on campus, but your technology vendor should be able to help you, teach you to access all people on campus, because that's another one of the points of the competencies is, if you're providing this great tool, the tool that's being provided should be accessible in many different avenues, just like Tracy is talking about ADA compliance and things like that. Just make sure that whatever you invest in, anyone in your campus community can access it.
Josie, is being someone who obviously does a lot of research in this area, what sort of things are you anticipating in the future here?
Well, practically, I hope that these types of conversations become common practice at conferences, that we don't need to shove our vendors just in a ballroom and meet with them in prescribed hours. That I think there might be some hesitance of, oh, if we allow vendors to do a session, they're just going to be selling their products to us. And I hope today we show the example of how we have so much more in common in the values, the mission that we have to our work. And that I think we're going to see more crossover in where people are going to get jobs. And the more that our services and our courses and curriculum go to digital places, we need each other to be stronger collaborators together to make sure the product is good, as well as what's being developed will actually make sense at a campus. On the research side, I feel like we're all cut from the same cloth, because this idea of educating students, families, staff, faculty, this holistic idea, I'm definitely one for empowerment in education and not just shaming, because there is another level of technology becomes very personal, surface level, social media. There's a lot of gray areas people get uncomfortable with, but especially at a higher level leader, if they start to feel like they don't understand language or semantics, that already is going to make them back away from a technology. So making it more commonplace to have these types of conversations educate people, know that it is going to take time, but the more we can put ourselves out there as hopefully resources for people to reach out to if they feel intimidated. Even I felt intimidated to go up to some vendors at a conference because I didn't know the questions to ask or what their product provided. So providing more mentors and role models in all avenues of technology is a win I would love to see.
Awesome. All right, well, we're coming up on the hour here, so I think that we should wrap things up. But you know, I just want to mention that Guidebook has some great resources, and including the Digital Leadership in Higher Ed series that this conversation is a part of. And you can find all of those on our blog at blog.guidebook.com. And we routinely produce webinars on our most common use cases, so be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates. Our handle is @Guidebook. And also, if you're interested in how your campus might be able to use Guidebook or any of the technologies discussed today, feel free to get in touch with us. And you can particularly get in touch with Guidebook just by going to guidebook.com. Anyone else? How about Tracy? Let's hear your sign off.
I'm just really thrilled to be here. I mean, yes, a conversation with ed tech providers and the community, because it is about collaboration. So this is the way forward, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I love to hear feedback. I love to hear how we can diversify student services and support, because that's the core of how students will achieve their academic goals. And I like to, you know, I follow Guidebook, and I'm excited about this series, and I thank them for having the insight and the connections and networking to make this all happen. So thank you so much for having me, you guys. I love this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Mickey, anything you want to leave us with?
You know, just thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. I think, you know, if anything proves is that, you know, I'm going to go back to the future where I started, is that there really is a bold future out there. And I think the more that we can have these great conversations, the more that students and families are going to benefit from it. And I'm just really excited to see what is next, because you constantly ask of what is next. And I think it's just having a shared vision of a better tomorrow. And I know that sounds really corny and trite, but I really do believe that that anything really is possible if we put a mind to it, and I think technology helps us do that. So thank you so much, and I would be remiss if I didn't say go Gators, so I have to do that. Sorry, it had to happen. So thanks so much.
I'm going to start calling you Mickey McFly, thanks to all your Back to the Future references. Jim, what do you want to leave us?
So, echo the panel. Thanks for having me on today as part of the Guidebook team to chat about the relationships that EdTech vendors are forming with student affairs professionals. The only thing that I would leave everyone with, and it kind of goes back to one of the first questions that we were asked to answer, and it is what's the one thing that you should ask an EdTech vendor as you start that relationship. And I want to overemphasize the fact that if you approach an EdTech vendor and the first thing you ask is simply, what do you do? Then that is a great starting point for a relationship, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we can align what we do as vendors with the needs of you and your campus. So don't be shy at a booth. If you come and find an EdTech vendor, don't be shy to fill out the little demo button on a website, and know that they shouldn't be harassing and following up with you constantly. It should just be a moving relationship that makes sense, and if it's not, then perhaps that's not the right vendor for you. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to each of you for joining us in this conversation today. I would love to be able to do this like basically every month. I think we would always have more conversations about technology and EdTech vendors and visions for the future. So in addition to teaching at Florida State University, you can find me at josiealquist.com, where I build digital leadership research and resources. And of course, you can find me on basically any social media application at Josie Alquist. Year-long, I travel around the world. I provide digital leadership education to student, staff, and faculty. One of my favorite things to do is to provide education to students around social media and basically how to be a leader online. And so if you're looking for someone to come to your campus to provide that kind of empowerment, especially to new students, student leaders, Greek athletes, etc., feel free to reach out. I would love to be able to support your efforts. So thank you so much for joining us today, and keep the conversation going at #DigLead. And this will be archived on YouTube, so it's also a shareable resource that you can send to colleagues or rewatch over and over again to your EdTech enjoyment. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Josie, I think that I share your enthusiasm for the conversation. I also want to thank everyone for being here today, and we should continue to have these conversations. So I guess follow Guidebook, follow Josie, and hopefully we'll continue to have really great conversations where we bring together worlds and continue to unite here in this space. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you soon.